Like Jamie said, I'm with the Integer Group, and I'm out of the Midwest office. And one thing that makes our office kind of unique in this space is we have a lot of clients that are considered purchase categories. For example, Michelin. I mean, you just don't run down to the store and buy it. You have to think about it. You do research. Pella windows and doors, Quick Step flooring. These are all not something you just run down the grocery aisle and pick up. So the consideration process is a lot deeper. So we're going to look at shopper marketing kind of from that perspective. And I think one of the other quick points to think about as the recession has come along and we've all kind of reevaluated things, almost everything now is a considered purchase on some level because you now are evaluating that. So we'll cover that a little bit off. We're also going to look at some trends that I think are impacting the way consumers behave and shop and interact with technology. And then I'm going to show you kind of a case study of one of those and kind of walk you through that process. A little closer. Yep. Is that better?
I think that's better.
All right. All right, so there's a lot of definitions out there on shopper marketing, but this one is basically starts with data, really, an understanding of current shopper behavior that employs appropriate marketing approach that engages shoppers to lead him or her to purchase on an ongoing basis while building brand equity and driving business growth for both the brands and the retailers. And that's a lot of things there, and I think that almost encapsulates what we've been saying the last day and a half. But I think it's critical to play that. We're going to break it down a little bit further. Where do we go? So, as we all know, the recession has kind of been a slap in the face. And I think Steve said it great for all of us personally, business-wise, and everything, and how we process stuff. So kind of the way we shop, the way we sell items as retailers, the way we choose brands, and just the whole process has dramatically changed due to the recession. And technology has rapidly increased simultaneously. So how do those two converge? We like at Integer, because of what I just told you about the considered purchase path, we like to look at things kind of in three approaches. We've got to look at the brand. Who is the brand? And yesterday, I forgot who it was, but did a great job of saying, you really got to know who you are and not try to be other different things and stretch too far. This morning, we talked about that as well. You also got to look at the retailer, and then you got to look at the shopper. And some of our clients, we are selling their products through channel partners. So you've got to really know, like if it's Pennzoil, for example. Pennzoil is sold in Walmart and AutoZone and Pep Boys. So how do you get those products in there, maintain true to the brand, and execute programs that the consumers are going to want? So that's why the three lenses is kind of very, very important to look at all of that collectively together. So stickiness, not stickiness in the old marketing sense of getting them to stay around, but what is sticky after all this recession? And we've all come up with new ways of consuming and looking at things. So we're going to look at two macro trends. We do a thing called Insightings, and it's about 10 trends that have kind of converged that impact the way we do things. But we're going to take a look at two, and then we'll build off of that. The first one is kind of the new busy. We are all busy in different ways now. A lot of people got laid off, so they had a lot of extra time. I had put in my notes, they watch cat videos, and I was hoping Margie was still here, because then she said that yesterday, and I was kind of laughing. You started doing things you've never done before. You're new busy because technology is advanced. So how do you converge all of that? I know I had a brief period of time there where I had about 6 months and I was doing some consulting work, which was my own decision, but it was interesting. I had all this extra time and I had to consume everything differently. I was absorbed with technology. My wife thought I had a lot of free time because I wasn't at a physical building, so she put shopping on me. So how do I process all of that in the new busy? And technology's coming at me, so what do I do? So that's something I think we have to think about, who your consumers are and how do you intersect that. Here's a little more detail about it. Shoppers who have time to reevaluate what to buy or what to do, no time for mistakes, means you need to know how to make the cut as a brand. So from a brand perspective, like I just said, there's a new routine, the overworked who are in companies that are running lean, just a lot of different ways that we've got to behave. From a retailer, you've got to streamline your store to cater to me, who's got to run through there and get whatever it is. And as a shopper, we have to mimic their behavior of this new everyday life with technology and how you intersect that. And there's some apps that are shown here, Grocery IQ. I actually use that one because I now do the grocery shopping, because during that phase, my wife thought I was really good at it. So how do you download that? How do you go, And so now it's kind of fun. It's an escape. So the new busy is, I think, something we really, really need to pay attention as marketers. And then shift to thrift. And this is not so much thrift and I've got to be cheap, but it's value. What does value mean for the shopper? And value can mean very different things for me versus John when we go into a store. Value may mean for me, I can get in and out, but I'm willing to pay what it costs. For John, it may be, no, I've got to find the lowest cost and I'll do what it is. So as marketers, you got to find what that value is for all the different consumers and hopefully meet that. These are a couple of good examples. One of them I really like is like Warby Parker. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's glasses. It's kind of cool, trendy glasses. And basically, they'll send you 5 pairs that you can pick that you think you might like. Just pay them $95 for one, keep one, and send the others back. And they know you're going to buy more than one, And so it's a good way of shopping on your own terms, trying something new and different. From a retailer perspective, Walmart did the kind of crowd saver, which is kind of like their own internal Groupon. It is evidently on hiatus. It's supposedly coming back. They're supposedly revamping it. I went out this morning just to check and make sure it hadn't relaunched. It hadn't last week, and it still says, we're improving. We'll be back in 2011. But it's a similar like strategy like Groupon and all the others. So how do you, play the thrift game, but be true to your brand is something I think you have to really, really consider. Another slide, I kind of already talked about it, but cost and value, everybody's going to process that differently. So I think as marketers, that's the challenge. How do we stay true to our brand, don't go cheap, like I think Steve talked about this morning, if you're Walmart, stay true to who you are, but still address these issues. And a good quote on the bottom, and on the top actually, but we are now willing to do some trade-offs as consumers. And where before we maybe weren't. So what are those trade-offs and how do we address those? And then Warren Buffett, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And I think you have to say that over and over again as we're working for our clients and they're pushing one way and you're pushing another. Is there really value here in it for the end consumer? So shopper marketing is, not a destination. I put in it's a 360 approach, and due to Jeff's comments yesterday, which I thought were brilliant, I said, and a 6 degrees of separation that you now need to go after. And I think that's great. I think it depends on the industry. I have a lot of clients, you walk in and they all have the 360 approach on their project list. We're going to find 360 view of our customer. And I'm always like, okay, does marketing know the IT people? And most often, no, we're trying to find them, and what does that mean, and how do we connect? Until marketing knows IT, you really can't know what the 360-degree view of the customer is. But also in some clients, you may not need to know all 360. It just depends on what it is. But I think the viral aspect in the 6 degrees is huge. So think of how that's going to be used. And then the key part, which I'm going to get to really quickly, is how do we integrate with technology at every point of that shopper based on what we know about them? So in the recent past, it was pretty simple. I needed a new pair of tennis shoes. I would look in the paper for ads. I'd find what store it was. I'd go there. That is so old. It's funny, but that's probably like 2 years ago. If you really think about it. Now I do all of this. I info search like crazy. I go online. I still look at the ads. That's part of the process, But I quickly ask my friends. I do everything. And now I go Zappos online, all that stuff. I'm about to do that again. I went and bought some new running shoes because somebody gave me a coupon. I still pay double what I normally pay because I had a coupon, so I get the more expensive ones. I went out on Zappos and realized I could have just thrown the coupon away and gotten it a lot cheaper. So now you think of all these different ways that we can shop and consume, and we have to realize our end users, consumers, are going to do that too. So here's a slide that kind of shows, everything. What I kind of just articulated. I've got apps coming in or coupons coming in, all the different ways to process it. So one way we like to look at it is don't get overwhelmed. Let's break it down into what we're calling the shopper continuum. And it's basically, as we've all said the last 2 days, it's not a linear path anymore. And we really break it down into 3 phases for whatever type of customer we approach. And this can go B2B, it can go packaged goods, it can go anywhere. So we kind of call it pre-tail, retail, and post-tail. And pre-tail is really kind of what I just described. I need some new shoes. I could have been back there sitting just Googling, trying to find where can I get these shoes? Who has the Brooks? Who has the whatever? I may have leaned over and said, hey, Carlos, what kind of running shoes do you have? It's that whole, investigative process, and that's what we call pre-tail. And then retail, obviously, is not obvious anymore. Retail is brick and mortar, but it's also online. It's also a salesperson, coming door to door, or whatever it is. Retail is wherever you can transact. And so that has changed. And then post-tail, which I think gets to the 6 degrees, that's where advocacy plays. That's where you want these people spinning in a loyalty circle. And it may not be a loyalty program, but it may be a loyalty strategy. So what are you doing in that post-tail to keep them coming back to you? Or if they drift, because maybe it's a category that you don't purchase every month or week, what are you doing to stay engaged to get them back into your funnel and going on? And they'll funnel back up into pre-tail, so you better make sure you're still doing things in that space. So it's kind of a good way to kind of break it out and chunk it out and not miss. It's a good gap analysis tool with clients to sit down and say, hey, where are you hitting the mark and where are there gaps and where can we meet that? So it's all about sustained engagement, and I think that's been a theme that's come through the last 2 days is how do you sustain engagement at whatever level through technology and whatever means of where our shoppers are at that point in time. So 2 things to keep in mind. The new busy, you've got to think about that, and you've got to think about shift to thrift when you're putting your marketing tactics together. And here's just a visual that kind of represents what I just said. Technology is all across the continuum, and some of the same technology plays at each section of that. So just be aware of what that technology needs to be delivering at those different phases or at different people's consumption habits. Kind of like Carlos said on his is, they want to go out and find the website. Well, it's not there. So that's a gap that we would need to fill for that. I thought this was kind of entertaining. You really got 2 kinds when it's all said and done. You've got brandvocates who are advocates for your brand and continue to sell it out, or you got badvocates because we're now in a social society, so they're going to put it out there. So we have to be more diligent than ever to protect our brands. So because if we screw up, it's out there. And then now you have a whole new marketing strategy to diffuse that. So there's no lukewarm. It's one way or the other. So I think that's a key point. I'm going to go through a case study now, and this is Pella Windows and Doors, and talk about a considered purchase. You don't say, hey, honey, we're going down the store this morning and buying some windows for the house. And most people don't know how to buy windows. Before I worked on the business, I was like, hadn't really thought about it. And that's where most people are in this space. So we're going to kind of walk through this client in a considered purchase, kind of the mindset that they go through for this, and then I'm going to show how we addressed it from a marketing standpoint and a technology standpoint. So we looked at the 3 lens model for Pella, and for Pella, they have a really, really, really strong brand. Most people know who they are. Most people think they're expensive and they're premium in that category, and that's all true. But they hold true to that because they're like, you get something for that premium. And so they're very, and rightfully so, they want to hang on to it. They don't want to step down and go with more like maybe used car sales, windows people. They want to stay true to the brand. And then sustained engagement is huge for them because, like I said, we're not running down Saturday and buying some windows. We may start doing some research. So you have to sustain engagement with them for your life cycle, whatever your life cycle is. Your life cycle may be 2 months because I'm getting windows in, I got to go. It may be 18 months, which is not uncommon for people that start this, especially in the economy that we're in. So the price value equation is another major step. Looks like my slide got a little bit wonky there. So thinking of this purchase, here are some phases that people go through on the continuum that we kind of think about, and then we figure out how to address them. First, they need to understand the landscape. Like I said, how do you buy windows? What do you do? So immediately, people go online, how to buy windows, and everything starts popping up. Then they get a lot of information. So they're still in the pre-tail stage, and so they start comparing all the options that are out there. Sears, Champion, window guy down the street. There's a ton of ads in all the papers that kind of look like used car sales. There's some nicer stuff. So what is all this? You see price points all across. And this category is really good about throwing prices out there, but we don't know what they mean as consumers. $99 a window. free installation. In my mind, I thought you have to pay for installation. I thought that was all part of the process. Other people say $500 off. What does that mean? So there's a ton of information that's out there that people are trying to compare and figure out. Validating and selecting. Now they get a little bit smart. How do I process that? I finally make a decision, and now I'm living with my product. So these are the major steps in this category that people kind of go through. So this slide, or the next few slides, really kind of goes through some thoughts that people would think. So at pre-tail, nobody really says, I want windows. Typically, I need windows. I may need it because a storm blew it down. I may need it because I moved into a new house and these are ugly. Or I may have been in my house 20 years and it's time to make them a little bit better because they're drafty and leaky. So I start doing the research. I look at houses in my neighborhood. All of a sudden, everybody's windows are of your top interest. So you start looking around. You start noticing the ads in the magazines. You start looking. You talk to your friends right off the bat, especially in a big purchase like this. Hey, has anybody got new windows lately? People will pop up. So that's the pre-tail stage for this. The second half of pre-tail is, okay, have a little bit of knowledge, I'm going to go out and start kicking the tires. So in window category, people go to big box because they don't know where else to go. So they go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, and they start looking around. And they're very limited. I mean, you go in, you see it. Nobody there knows how to sell windows and doors at those types of places because it's specialist. But I start looking, I start flipping the doors, flipping the windows, and I'm more confused than ever now. So then it gives me all these choices. So I have to start defining, what do I want? What do I need? I start looking at the pricing. I'm starting to go, okay, this is even more confusing than I thought. And so I'm overwhelmed, and then I start thinking, well, I need to get a professional into the mix. So I see things about scheduling reps to come to my house, and I start to freak out. I don't want people coming to my house because I don't want to look stupid. So I keep doing research. I talk to more friends and neighbors. Has anybody gotten windows lately? What do we need to do? And I do more online research because now I've got more information. So I start Googling other things and seeing what I can find. So now I'm become smarter. I may even let a sales rep in my house, or 3 or 4. I may have decided I've got over that hurdle. I start dialing, and so I call all of them, and they all come in different styles and different offers and all kinds of stuff. So I start narrowing it down, and I start figuring out what it's really going to cost. And here's where I'm going to make a decision. And so at this stage, it's key things like warranties. J.D. Powers, this is a company I trust. It'll be around for the next 20 years. When I put these things, are they going to blow holes in my house and tear it up? Some of these companies, I got to figure out, do I feel good about this? So finally, I'm going to choose a supplier. And then they come in. And interesting thing in windows, and we pretty much just showed females here because what we found with them is females start the process for the most part in this category. They do a little bit of the research, talk to their friends, all that stuff. Then they bring the males in when they start getting confused and the money thing comes up. A lot of sales reps in the window category won't come into a house if both people are not in there. Pella does not play that game because with the new busy that we're in, both people are never there. But it's interesting because we have to target to women in the beginning, and then in the middle at the retail, we have to target to both, the whole family. And then in the end, in the advocacy stage, it's females. So it does skew the messaging and the media and the technology that plays into that. And in this stage, I'm going to talk about it with my friends. I'm proud of my windows. We actually have some neighbors that just got new windows, and we're new in this neighborhood, and I didn't meet them till then. I saw the Pella truck. The guy was out. He goes, hey, come look at my new windows. But that's only going to happen at that one point in time. So how do we create advocacy around that moment in time, especially in a category that you buy maybe 1.25 in your life, but it's a big purchase, so it's going to create a lot of advocacy. So a little more detail on what we've done with Pella in this space. It is truly integrated. We're fortunate enough to do all of their marketing, so we're able to go to them and actually do an integrated approach. But there's a lot of online, a lot of search. We do a lot of acquisition, direct mail. And I'm going to talk a little bit about targeting, because when 2008 came and the fun economic times came, window sales and things like this just shut down. I mean, I didn't have money to pay my bills, so I'm sure as heck not going to spend $12,000 on windows. But on the flip side, you started seeing people say, okay, I'm not going to move. I need to make my house better because I'm going to be here for a long time. I've had to move people into my house. Now it's a multi-generational house. You know, the electric bills are bad. So you had a little bit of that going on. But people's evaluation and getting in category was very, very different than it had been historically. And so we had to really look at and figure out, with a company that had limited marketing dollars, how do we not waste it? Direct mail for them had historically done fairly well. They hadn't tracked it a lot. So we went in and said, you know, give us what data you have, which was very limited at that stage because they'd been capturing of people who've bought in the past. So we did some profiling and we created a very, what I considered a shallow level model, but it was a model to go out and just score some people. And we went to decile 1s and decile 2s and all the way down to 5 and went out with that. And it was hugely successful because, I mean, nobody's in category for windows, and we're trying to mail to people. It's truly a needle in a haystack. So it was things like your house is of a certain age. You have enough income to afford windows, which are typically $7,000 to $12,000 to $20,000. Just all kinds of variables, and they started looking at characteristics. And some of the variables, there was an economic stability indicator. So if I own a house of X value in Kentucky, that means very different than I own a house of X value in LA. So all these things balanced out to create this decile system. And we were able to go in and basically reduce their mail costs 50%, and they were still achieving 90% of the people that came in. So it was huge. The problem they then had was, okay, great, let's use that extra money and go get more people. Well, the model showed there weren't more people that would respond. There's only so many people in category at one point in time. So what that turned into is when people come into category, that, like I said, they just don't transact. So a lead nurturing program became a huge part for them. So this is where we got to sit down with them, and I have a database background, and we went and met with their IT people. The marketing people said, we don't know the IT people. Here's a couple guys' names. Go talk to them. Tell me what you want to do. So we sat down with them and actually forced a CDI project, a data integration project for them. And now we get hourly data feeds that come in of new leads that come in, and we have triggered programs that go out based on preference of channel, based on what their project timing is. And it has been hugely successful, to take a real difficult category of where there's not people running around saying, I want Windows, and letting them know, this is a brand that's there when you need it to get you to start thinking about it. And this just kind of shows some examples. From a technology standpoint, mobile is a little bit difficult. Right now there's some apps that, the apps are more kind of gimmicky, and not gimmicky, but like you can measure. There's an app that you can measure. There's, it's more just engagement tools. It's not necessarily, and all the competition is doing the same thing in that space. We have had great success, though, with apps for Pella and a B2B from a contractor perspective. How do you get them? And that's huge. Email is huge in the lead nurturing stage because these people are totally in category with you. So, where are they at in the process? We embed videos about installation. We embed videos about the in-home consultation, that it's not some creepy person that's going to come in. They're not going to stay for 4 hours. You can control it, So you can do all of that online and get a comfort what's going to happen. And then when Pella shows up, you kind of can see a difference. And like I said, retail is very different. For them, retail, true best retail, is in your house. They have showrooms. There's not that many of them. There's also Lowe's where you can go, and all of it is retail for them. So we have to figure that out. But the ultimate goal is you have to go in somebody's home as a Pella rep to sell them windows. You can buy it from Lowe's. It's a different experience. But bottom line, in-home is where it happens there. So you have to overcome that hurdle, because I don't know many people that are wanting everybody to come to their home all throughout the week. And then online is a retail space for them. You can't transact, but you can go in and do, what would my house look like with these kinds of windows? It's a configurator. You can kind of create the experience and gain that confidence so that when the sales rep comes in, you know what's going on. And then from a post-sale perspective, we're doing some advocacy stuff with them where it's kind of like taking pictures of your window. You can post them out on Facebook. You can share. You can, especially in the female space, they can say, hey, look at my new windows, spread them around. And it's creating a lot of good, positive, social media that now is fueling pre-tail when people Google. So it's a lot of user-generated content that's kind of creating that funnel. And then another big win that we've had for them is segmentation. Nobody buys all the windows or all the doors in their house at once. They just can't afford it. But once they start that process and they get comfortable, they lived through it once, we found that we would go back to them within the first 6 months, and response rates are through the roof because all the hurdles that were prior there are now gone. So how do you capitalize that on that point in time and go back to them? And so it's just been a great success story from segmentation, from automation of data flow, from, as we're using mobile, but mobile's more from a sales branch perspective, like texting confirmation, I'm going to be there tomorrow at 6. It's not the interactive dialogue that is kind of optimal, and I think they'll get there. But the demographic here is typically 35 to probably 55, 60 is where most of the purchases happen. So, but lots of good opportunity there. And it's been a great success for them. Where'd it go? Results. So they really have a connected, integrated approach as a baseline, and now I think we can just continue to add as technology goes on and advances to make it even more sophisticated. And from a results standpoint, in the first year after we implemented the modeling and the lead nurturing, they gained an additional 17% market share, and a 900% ROI on the first 6 months of modeling going out versus all the mail that they've been wasting before. So a really huge success and a good example of how to navigate the continuum, in a highly considered purchase. So key things to keep in mind, some of these are a good recap from the last 2 days. The future is now. Technology's changing rapidly, so we've kind of got to jump on that. Technology has changed shopper behavior and will continue to change it. Probably since we've been in here the last 2 days, there's new technology that's popped up that's going to change the way that we're going to do things in 6 months. It just happened right there. The purchase path is really now a continuum. We've heard that. It's not linear anymore. So how do you address that? And then brand, retailer, and shopper are all equally important and must be connected if we're going to be successful as marketers. So that's all I got. Any questions? No questions? Cool. Do you?
Yes. On the so Pella had the information you were able to hook up with their IT people, so they already had the information on purchase behavior in a database of their customers, or was it something you had to build?
Well, we're two things. They had, we are building. All they had was prior customers who had purchased. And that was very limited because they had completely disparate databases with how leads came in. And then once they got into the sales cycle, they were somewhere else. And at that stage, the individual branches owned a lot of that. They've since centralized that, consolidated the systems. And so we were only able to go back, I think, 1.5 years of data at that point in time. They've now since started capturing it, so now we're up to 3 years of data, and that's continuing. And then what we're also doing is every interaction that goes out, I talked about the hourly data feeds that come in and trigger an email or direct mail or whatever it is, all those interactions are being captured. So we're learning habits. So if people say my project's in 6 months and you do this cadence, then you can speed it up by X. And so we're continuing to build that database and continuing to learn. So we kind of laugh, it's job security because, they started with no data and we're just continuing to build more and more and more in there. So they were very fortunate. They had the infrastructure in place, they were just not using it to its fullest capacity, and you just had to identify the people. There still is a challenge of marketing and IT. Carlos and I were talking about it, is now everybody knows who they are, so that's kind of a bad thing because they see marketing coming and they say, no, we don't have enough developers to do this. Give us your plans for the next 2 years while I have resources now. So, but the good thing is they know who they are, they have dialogue, there's meetings all the time, and so that's light years ahead of a lot of companies I know that we're running into who don't even know where their data is or have no data, and marketing and IT don't even have any kind of relationship. So they have made huge strides in the last 3 years in that respect. So, yep.
The people that are going into the employees who are the contractors going into people's homes, they're not employees of Pella, right?
They're what?
They are contractors, not employees of.
No, they're employees of Pella, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the competitive differences that Pella has. Installation and the branch owners are all Pella employees, where a lot of the competition, it's all contracted out.
That's big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. And Pella has not touted that. They are now more, but they have not made that difference very vocal. But you also have other issues. I mean, Pella sells through Lowe's, and that's a completely different business model, and it's very profitable, but you kind of have to play that balance, because if you buy it through Lowe's, or they don't sell through Home Depot, but any of the window brands that sell through that, the installation is completely contracted out by that big box. And so there's some give and take there. You may get it cheaper, you may get it installed if you never have any problems. Hey, it was cool. So these are things as consumers we have to weigh, and as marketers we got to figure out how to navigate and figure out what your competitive difference is, and make sure the end user who's not that well versed in this category gets that and understands that. So
Pella's a high involvement purchase. How does the shopper continuum change for a low involvement product like, say, laundry detergent?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think you still have the pre-tail. Pre-tail's huge, as people are just out there. And I mean, everybody's got Facebook pages, everybody's liking new stuff. So I think as marketers, and we're marketing detergent, how do you make that play into the social media space? And how do you change behavior? Because I think that's a huge piece of that. We're working with one client right now that laundry detergent has some connectivity to it. And we're partnering with companies that make washers and stuff, and how do you bring that in and create trial, and then create social aspects that people can talk about that, so I think that's one way you could do that. I think you've got to have the social media piece of that in there. If the people are going to play it, whether you had a strategy or not. And that's one of the things that Pella has struggled with, because it is a high considered purchase. People are out there talking about it. The guy that showed up, he was a jerk, he whatever, or they put in windows and the rain's coming in, So stuff's like that's going to happen whether it's detergent or not. So what's your plan to curtail that and turn that into a positive social experience that people then will read, oh, but then they came out and fixed it and it's great, So.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, thank you.